Captain Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. The station looked like a silver wheel spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Behind it, the gas giant Kepler 442b glowed, with swirling orange and red clouds. This was supposed to be a place of peace, but something felt wrong about the whole situation. The Defiance was humanity's finest diplomatic vessel. It had sleek lines and powerful engines, but it was built for talking, not fighting. Lee Hyun had commanded warships before this assignment, and he missed the heavy armor and big guns. Now he carried diplomats and scientists instead of marines and missiles. 3 years of war with the Vorthic Empire had cost humanity dearly. Entire colonies had been burned from orbit. Millions of people had died or been forced to flee their homes. The aliens seemed unstoppable with their advanced technology and ruthless tactics. But something had changed in recent months. Human forces had started winning small battles in the Outer Rim, territories using hit-and-run tactics. The communication system crackled to life, and Admiral Park Min-ho appeared as a blue hologram on the bridge. The old military leader looked tired, but determined. His gray uniform bore the scars of many battles, and his weathered face showed the weight of command during wartime. "Captain Lee, the diplomatic team is ready for transport to the station," Admiral Park said in his deep voice. "I want you to know that High Command has serious doubts about this peace offer. The Vorthak have never shown mercy before. Why would they start now?" Lee Hyun nodded slowly. He had the same concerns. "Sir, what do our intelligence reports say about their recent losses?" "Significant enough to make them consider negotiations," the Admiral replied. "Our raids on their supply convoys have disrupted their operations across 3 systems. They are having trouble maintaining their expansion, but that could make them more dangerous, not less." The captain understood the warning. Wounded animals often fought the hardest when cornered. The Vorthak might be looking for a way to end the war on their terms rather than seeking real peace. Ambassador Kim Nari entered the bridge carrying a datapad filled with negotiation points. She was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her home colony of New Seoul had been one of the first targets of the Vorthak invasion. She had lost everything but somehow found the strength to keep working for peace. "Captain, the terms they have offered are almost too good to be true," she said, reviewing her notes. "They are willing to discuss withdrawal from contested systems and prisoner exchanges. They even mentioned possible trade agreements." Dr. Choi Daeho followed behind her, adjusting his thick glasses. The xenobiologist was younger than the ambassador, but his knowledge of alien cultures was unmatched in human space. He carried several scanning devices and a portable computer filled with data about Vorthic behavior patterns. "That is exactly what concerns me," Dr. Choi said quietly. "The Vorthak social structure is built on dominance and conquest. Offering generous terms goes against everything we know about their psychology. Either they are desperate or this is some kind of trap." Sergeant Major Yoon Ji-woo stepped forward from her position near the security station. She was a compact woman with muscular arms and alert eyes that never stopped scanning for threats. Her black uniform bore the marks of countless battles, and her weapons were always within easy reach. "Captain, my teams have been studying the station layout," she reported. "The defensive system seems standard for a neutral meeting place, but something feels off. The weapon placements and shield generators are positioned strangely, almost like they are designed to keep ships in rather than keep enemies out." Lee Hyun felt his stomach tighten. His experienced crew was all reporting the same thing. This peace conference felt like a setup. But orders were orders, and humanity desperately needed to end this war. "Too many people had died already, Lieutenant Commander." Bae-sahi looked up from her communications console. She was the youngest member of the senior staff, but her skills with technology were extraordinary. Her fingers danced over holographic controls as she monitored dozens of channels at once. "Captain, I am detecting multiple Vorthak signatures just outside the asteroid belt," she reported. "They claim the ships are there for ceremonial purposes, but I count at least 12 heavy cruisers." "That seems like a lot of ceremony," The captain walked to the main view screen and stared at the approaching station. Every instinct he had developed during years of combat was screaming warnings. The Vorthak were predators who had built their empire on strength and fear. They did not suddenly become peaceful without a very good reason. "How long until we dock?" he asked. 15 minutes, sir," replied the navigation officer. Li Haiyan turned to address his senior staff. "I want all departments on alert status. Keep weapons powered down to avoid provocations, but be ready to bring them online quickly. Sergeant Major, I want your security teams positioned throughout the ship. If this goes bad, we need to be ready." Ambassador Kim Nari looked concerned. "Captain, we cannot appear hostile during peace negotiations. If they detect military preparations, it could ruin any chance for ending this war." "Ma'am, with respect, I would rather ruin peace talks than lose this ship and crew," Li Haiyan replied firmly. "We will follow diplomatic protocols, but we will also be prepared for trouble." Dr. Choi was studying readings from his scanning equipment. "The station is definitely Vorthak construction despite claims of neutrality. The metal composition and energy signatures match their standard designs. They built this place, which means they control it completely." The space station grew larger on the screen, showing more details of its construction. Docking bays lined the outer rim and weapon ports were visible between them. It looked peaceful enough, but appearances could be deceiving, especially when dealing with aliens who had spent years trying to destroy humanity. "All stations prepare for docking procedures," Li Haiyan announced. "And remember, everyone, we are diplomats today, but we are still human. Stay alert and trust your instincts. If something seems wrong, it probably is." The Defiance moved slowly toward its assigned berth while the crew prepared for what might be the most important meeting in human history, or it might be their last. The negotiation chamber was enormous and decorated with gleaming metal walls that curved up toward a crystal dome ceiling. Strange alien symbols glowed with soft blue light along the walls. The room was designed to impress visitors and show the advanced technology of whoever built it. Captain Li Haiyan felt small as he walked beside Ambassador Kim Nari toward the central conference table. The Vorthak delegation was already waiting when the humans arrived. High Commander Thexfer stood nearly 3 meters tall with dark green scales covering his massive frame. His yellow eyes were the size of dinner plates, and his mouth was filled with sharp teeth that could easily tear through metal. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. Behind the High Commander stood his translator Velmuth, who was smaller but no less intimidating. This alien had silver scales and 4 arms that moved independently of each other. Its head was shaped like a triangle with multiple eyes that could look in different directions at the same time. When it translated between languages, its voice sounded like glass breaking. Ambassador Kim Nari took her seat at the polished table and opened her data pad with the human proposals. She had spent months preparing for this moment and knew exactly what humanity needed from any peace agreement. Her voice was calm and professional as she began to speak. "High Commander Thexfer, we appreciate your willingness to meet and discuss ending this conflict between our peoples," she said clearly. "Humanity desires peace, but we must address several important issues before any treaty can be signed." The massive alien leader leaned forward in his specially designed chair. Through his translator, he responded in a surprisingly reasonable tone. "Ambassador Kim, your species has proven more resilient than we expected. Perhaps it is time to find a new path forward that benefits both our empires." Dr. Choi Deho sat quietly to the side, taking notes and monitoring his scanning equipment. Something about the Vorthak behavior seemed strange to him. In all his years studying alien cultures, he had never seen these particular creatures show such flexibility. They were known throughout the galaxy for their rigid military thinking and absolute refusal to compromise. The negotiations continued for several hours, with Ambassador Kim presenting humanity's terms. She demanded complete Vorthak withdrawal from 12 contested star systems. She requested the immediate release of all human prisoners taken during the war. She also proposed establishing trade routes between the two species and creating neutral zones where conflicts could be avoided. To everyone's surprise, High Commander Thexfer agreed to almost every demand with minimal discussion. The massive Alien seemed eager to move forward with the peace process. He offered compensation for destroyed human colonies and promised to share certain technologies that could benefit both species. "This is going too well," Dr. Choi whispered to Captain Lee Hyun during a brief recess. "The Vorthic psychology profiles indicate they should be fighting every single point. Their entire social structure is based on showing strength through conquest. Offering concessions like this goes against their fundamental nature," Captain Lee Hyun nodded as he watched the alien delegation through the transparent wall of their private conference room. "What do you think it means, Doctor? Either they are facing a much worse situation than our intelligence suggests, or this entire meeting is some kind of elaborate deception," Dr. Choi replied while adjusting his scanning devices. "I am detecting unusual chemical emissions from both aliens. Their stress levels appear normal, but there are other compounds present that I cannot identify." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Bae Sahi was working frantically at her portable communication station back aboard the Defiance. She had been monitoring all transmissions in the area when she detected something disturbing. Hidden within the normal background radiation were encrypted signals being sent between the Vorthak vessels outside the system. The signals were heavily coded using mathematics that human computers could barely understand. But the pattern analysis suggested coordination between multiple military units. The aliens were definitely planning something beyond simple ceremonial presence. Basahi immediately contacted Captain Lee Hyun through his personal communicator. "Captain, I am detecting organized communication between the Vorthak ships," she reported quietly. "The signals are too complex for me to decode completely, but they appear to be tactical in nature. This does not look like ceremonial fleet behavior." Back at the station, Sergeant Major Yoon Ji-woo had been conducting what she called routine security inspections throughout the facility. Her trained eye noticed several irregularities in the station's defensive systems. Weapon emplacements that should have been pointing outward toward potential threats were instead aimed inward toward the docking bays. The shield generators were also positioned strangely. Instead of creating a protective barrier around the station, they seemed designed to create an energy field that would trap vessels already inside the docking area. Yoon Ji-woo had seen similar setups before during boarding operations. Against enemy ships, she quietly placed small explosive charges near critical power junctions throughout the station. Her Marines were trained for exactly this kind of situation where a peaceful mission might suddenly turn violent. The charges were tiny and nearly impossible to detect, but they could disable key systems if activated. As the second day of negotiations began, Ambassador Kim Nari felt cautiously optimistic about reaching an agreement. The Vorthak had accepted most human demands and seemed genuinely interested in ending the conflict. She began drafting preliminary treaty language that could be sent back to Earth for approval. Dr. Choi continued monitoring alien behavior patterns, but his concerns were growing stronger. The chemical signatures he was detecting suggested the Vorthak were suppressing their normal aggressive responses. It was as if they were forcing themselves to appear peaceful when their instincts demanded violence, High Commander Thexfer called for another recess, and the alien delegation withdrew to their private chambers. Through his scanning equipment, Dr. Choi detected a sudden spike in stress chemicals and aggressive pheromones from both creatures. Whatever they were discussing behind closed doors was causing their true nature to emerge. Captain Lee Hyun gathered his senior staff for an emergency meeting aboard the Defiance. The evidence was mounting that something was seriously wrong with these peace negotiations. Every member of his crew was reporting suspicious activity or unusual readings. "I think, we need to prepare for the possibility that this entire conference is a trap," he told his officers. "But we cannot act on suspicions alone. We need solid proof before we can take any aggressive action." The peaceful space station continued its slow rotation around the distant gas giant, while two very different species sat across from each other at a conference table. One side genuinely wanted peace while the other was preparing for war. The question was which side would discover the truth first. The morning of the second day started like any other diplomatic meeting, but everything changed when High Commander Thexfer entered the negotiation chamber with a different attitude. His massive frame seemed even more threatening than before, and his yellow eyes glowed with predatory hunger. The fake politeness from the previous day had completely disappeared. Ambassador Kimnari noticed the change immediately as she reviewed her notes for the final treaty discussions. The alien leader no longer bothered to wait for his translator before speaking. His voice filled the chamber with harsh growling sounds that made the metal walls vibrate. "The time for pretending is over, little humans," Dexver announced as his translator Velmuth stepped forward with what looked like a weapon in its 4 hands. "You walked into our trap exactly as we planned. Your leaders and your finest ship are now completely under our control." The chamber suddenly filled with armed Vorthic soldiers who had been waiting in hidden passages throughout the station. Their dark armor gleamed under the artificial lights, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Ambassador Kimnari tried to maintain her diplomatic composure even as her heart raced with fear. "High Commander, this violates every principle of diplomatic immunity," she said firmly. "Attacking peaceful negotiators will only make the war worse for both our species." The massive alien leader laughed with a sound like rocks grinding together. "Your weak concepts mean nothing to us human. We are predators and you are prey. The only mistake we made was not doing this sooner." Dr. Troidejo realized that his worst fears were coming true. The Vorthak had been studying human psychology and military doctrine for months, preparing this elaborate trap. They knew that humanity would send its best leaders to any genuine peace conference. Capturing or killing them would leave Earth's forces without proper command during the crucial early stages of a new offensive. Captain Li Haiyan heard the commotion through his communicator and immediately ordered battle stations throughout the Defiance. But when his crew tried to power up the ship's weapons and engines, nothing happened. The station's modified systems had activated, creating an energy-dampening field that disabled all major ship functions. Lieutenant Commander Bei Sahi worked frantically at her console trying to restore power to critical systems. Her screen showed that the dampening field was incredibly sophisticated and designed specifically to counter human technology. The aliens had been planning this trap for a very long time. "Captain, the field is blocking our main engines and all weapon systems," she reported with growing panic in her voice. "I can maintain life support and basic communications, but we cannot fight or run through the main view screen." The crew of the Defiance watched in horror as the Vorthic fleet emerged from behind the asteroid belt. What they had thought were 12 ceremonial cruisers was actually a massive armada of over 50 warships, including enormous dreadnoughts and carrier vessels filled with fighter craft. The alien fleet moved with precise coordination toward the space station and the trapped human diplomatic vessel. Their formation showed months of careful planning and preparation. This was not a spontaneous attack, but a carefully orchestrated military operation designed to cripple humanity's leadership and open the way for a final assault on Earth itself. Sergeant Major Yun Jiwoo had been expecting something like this to happen. Her Marines were already in position throughout the station with weapons ready and explosive charges placed near critical systems. When the trap was revealed, she immediately began her counterattack. "All units execute emergency protocol 7, she commanded through her tactical communicator. "Hit the power junctions and disable their dampening field generators. We need to give the Defiance a fighting chance." Her Marines moved with deadly precision through the station corridors, engaging Vorthic soldiers in close-quarters combat. The aliens were larger and stronger, but the humans were faster and more adaptable. Years of fighting against superior enemies had taught them how to use speed and cunning to overcome raw power. Back in the negotiation chamber, Velmuth revealed the full scope of the alien plan. The Vorthak had never intended to make peace with humanity. Instead, they had spent months analyzing human military structure and identifying key leadership targets. The peace conference was designed to eliminate Earth's command structure in one decisive strike. "Your Admiral Park Min-ho and your other military leaders believe you are safely conducting negotiations," the translator said with obvious satisfaction. "They have no idea that our main fleet is already moving toward your home system. By the time They realize what has happened. It will be too late to organize an effective defense. Ambassador Kim Nari felt sick as she realized how completely they had been outmaneuvered. The Vorthak had used humanity's own desire for peace as a weapon against them. Every human instinct to seek diplomatic solutions had been turned into a trap. Dr. Choi Dae-ho was studying the alien behavior patterns even in this desperate situation. He noticed that the Vorthak soldiers were following very rigid tactical formations and responding to orders in predictable ways. Their military efficiency was impressive, but it also showed a lack of individual initiative that might be exploited. Captain Lee Hyun coordinated with Sergeant Major Yoon Ji-woo's assault teams while trying to find some way to restore power to his ship. The Defiance was completely helpless while the dampening field remained active, but his crew refused to give up without a fight. Lieutenant Commander Bae Sahi managed to boost power to the communication array just long enough to send an emergency transmission toward human space. The message contained detailed information about the Vorthak fleet positions and tactical capabilities. If it reached Admiral Park Min-ho, it might give Earth's defenses a chance to prepare for the coming attack. The space station shook as explosions rocked its internal structure. Yoon Ji-woo's Marines were systematically destroying critical systems while fighting their way toward the main power core. The Vorthak had superior numbers and firepower, but they had underestimated human determination and resourcefulness. High Commander Thexfer ordered his soldiers to eliminate the human prisoners before they could cause more damage. But Ambassador Kim Nari and Dr. Choi Dae-ho were not helpless diplomats. They had both survived the destruction of their home colonies and learned to fight when necessary. The trap had been sprung, but the humans were far from defeated. The real battle was just beginning. Sergeant Major Yoon Ji-woo moved through the station corridors like a force of nature. Her Marines followed behind her, using every trick they had learned during 3 years of fighting against superior alien technology. The Vorthak soldiers were bigger and had better weapons, but they moved in predictable patterns that made them easy targets. Squad 2, take the left passage and hit the secondary power grid, she commanded while firing her rifle at a group of alien soldiers. Squad 3, follow me to the main generator room. We need to shut down that dampening field before the fleet gets here. Her teams moved with the speed and coordination that came from fighting together through countless battles. They used human engineering knowledge to target weak points in the station's structure. Every explosion was carefully placed to cause maximum damage to alien systems while avoiding areas where human prisoners might be held. The Vorthak had built the station using their standard designs, which meant heavy armor and powerful shields, but also predictable layouts. Yoon Ji-woo had studied alien construction techniques and knew exactly where to find the most important systems. Her Marines carried shaped charges specifically designed to penetrate alien metal. Meanwhile, Dr. Choi Dae-ho was making the most important discovery of his scientific career. While hiding from Vorthak soldiers in a maintenance room, he had been analyzing their communication patterns with his portable scanning equipment. The aliens used quantum-entangled transmitters to coordinate their fleet movements, but the system had a critical weakness. Captain Lee, I think I found something important, he whispered into his communicator while watching alien patrol units march past his hiding spot. The Vorthak fleet coordination depends on quantum communication nodes that operate on very specific frequencies. If we can disrupt those frequencies, their entire command structure will collapse. Captain Lee Hyun received the message just as Lieutenant Commander Bae Sahi managed to restore partial power to the ship's communication array. The dampening field was weakening thanks to Sergeant Major Yoon Ku's sabotage efforts, but the Defiance was still trapped and surrounded by enemy vessels. Dr. Choi, what do you need to build this frequency disruptor? The captain asked while dodging weapons fire from Vorthak boarding parties that were trying to storm his ship. I need access to our main communication dish and about 10 minutes to reconfigure the transmission array, Dr. Choi replied. But the equipment is located on the outer hull where the alien fighters can target it easily, Lieutenant Commander Bae Sahi was already working on the problem. Her fingers flew over holographic controls as she rerouted power systems and reconfigured communication protocols. She had always been brilliant with technology, but now her skills might save not just the ship, but all of humanity. Captain, I can jury-rig the internal communication system to generate the frequencies Dr. Choi needs, she reported. It will burn out most of our electronics, but it should work for a few minutes in the negotiation chamber. Ambassador Kim Nari was proving that diplomats could be just as dangerous as soldiers when pushed too far. She had grabbed a piece of broken metal from the damaged conference table and was using it to fight off Vorthak guards while protecting Dr. Choi's research equipment. You made a mistake when you destroyed my home colony, she told High Commander Dexver as she dodged his massive claws. You taught me that sometimes peace can only be won through strength. I learned to fight because aliens like you gave me no choice. The massive alien leader was surprised by the human female's resistance. He had expected weak diplomats who would surrender immediately when faced with superior force. Instead, he found himself fighting opponents who refused to give up no matter how hopeless their situation appeared. Captain Lee Hyun coordinated the desperate breakout attempt from the bridge of the Defiance. Sergeant Major Yoon Ji-woo's sabotage had created enough chaos to temporarily disable the dampening field, but they only had a few minutes before the Vorthak restored their systems. All hands prepare for emergency maneuvers, he announced over the ship's communication system. We are going to ram our way through the docking clamps and make a run for open space. This is going to be rough, so hold on to something solid. The Defiance shook violently as its engines came back online at full power. The ship tore free from the station's docking mechanisms, leaving twisted metal and debris floating in space. But the human vessel was still surrounded by dozens of Vorthak warships that immediately opened fire with their advanced weapons. Lieutenant Commander Bae Sahi activated Dr. Choi's frequency disruptor just as the enemy fleet began its coordinated attack. The effect was immediate and devastating to the alien forces. Their quantum communication network collapsed, causing massive confusion throughout their formation. Vorthak ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly found themselves without central command. Some vessels fired on their own allies, while others collided with each other as their navigation systems failed. The rigid military hierarchy that made them so effective in normal combat became their greatest weakness when communication broke down. Dr. Choi watched the chaos through the station's observation windows and realized that human adaptability was proving superior to alien efficiency. The Vorthak had built their entire military system around perfect coordination and instant communication. When that system failed, they could not adapt quickly enough to changing conditions. Captain Lee Hyun exploited the confusion by targeting the largest enemy vessel, which appeared to be the fleet command ship. The Defiance was smaller and less heavily armed than any Vorthak warship, but it was also much more maneuverable. Human engineering had always emphasized speed and flexibility over raw firepower. The diplomatic vessel dove through the chaotic alien formation using debris from destroyed enemy ships as cover. Vorthak gunners tried to target the human ship, but their coordination was completely broken. They were fighting as individual vessels instead of a unified fleet. Sergeant Major Yoon Ji-woo led her Marines in a boarding action against the crippled command vessel. Her teams used magnetic grapples to cross the space between ships while under fire from alien defenders. It was an incredibly dangerous maneuver, but human soldiers had learned to take risks that alien forces would never attempt. The Marines landed on the outer hull of the Vorthak flagship and began cutting through the armor with plasma torches. They moved in small teams that could adapt to changing situations instead of following rigid battle plans. Each human fighter was trained to think independently and make decisions without waiting for orders. Inside the alien command ship Yoon Gi-woo's forces faced Vorthak soldiers in close quarters combat. The confined spaces favored human tactics over alien size and strength. Years of fighting in damaged space stations and ruined cities had taught them how to use environment as a weapon. Ambassador Kim Nari continued fighting in the negotiation chamber, but now she had help. Dr. Choi had modified his scanning equipment into a makeshift weapon that disrupted Vorthak nervous systems. The aliens found their reflexes slowing and their coordination failing as the modified device affected their brain functions. The tide of battle was turning as human ingenuity and adaptability proved superior to alien technology and rigid thinking. But the fight was far from over, and the ultimate outcome would depend on whether the humans could maintain their advantage long enough to complete their desperate mission. Dr. Troy Deho's electromagnetic weapon was proving more effective than anyone had imagined possible. The modified communication array aboard the Defiance continued broadcasting disruption frequencies that turned the organized Vorthak fleet into a chaotic mass of confused and panicking vessels. Alien ships collided with each other as their navigation systems failed and their commanders lost contact with Central Command. Captain Lee Hyun watched the destruction through the main viewscreen with a mixture of amazement and satisfaction. The massive Vorthak dreadnoughts that had seemed so threatening just minutes before were now firing randomly into space or ramming into their own support vessels. The rigid hierarchy that made them powerful in normal combat had become their greatest weakness. Lieutenant Commander Bay continued broadcasting those frequencies. He ordered while maneuvering the Defiance toward the alien command ship. Dr. Choi, how long can we maintain this disruption before our systems burn out completely? The scientist's voice crackled over the communication system from his position aboard the space station. Captain, the equipment is already overheating, but I estimate we have maybe 15 more minutes before everything shuts down permanently. We need to make this time count. The Defiance punched through the defensive screen around the Vorthak flagship, using the chaos to avoid most of the enemy weapons. Fire. The alien gunners were firing blind without proper targeting data from their command networks. Human piloting skills and quick thinking were proving superior to advanced alien technology. Sergeant Major Yoon Ji-woo and her Marines had successfully breached the hull of the enemy command vessel and were fighting their way toward the bridge. The corridors inside the alien ship were designed for creatures much larger than humans, which actually gave the Marines an advantage. They could move through spaces that Vorthak soldiers found difficult to navigate. Squad leaders report status. Yoon Ji-woo commanded as her teams advanced through the ship using human tactics that the aliens had never encountered before. Remember, these creatures are used to fighting in open space or on planetary surfaces. They do not know how to handle boarding actions in confined spaces. Her Marines used their smaller size and greater agility to outmaneuver the Vorthak defenders. They crawled through ventilation systems and maintenance passages to attack from unexpected directions. Each human soldier carried weapons designed for close-quarters combat, while the aliens were equipped for larger-scale battles. The Vorthak soldiers were individually stronger and had better armor, but they moved in predictable formations that made them vulnerable to human ambush tactics. Years of fighting against superior enemies had taught the Marines how to use cunning and surprise to overcome raw power. Lieutenant Commander Bae Sahi had taken control of several alien communication channels and was now broadcasting surrender demands directly to the Vorthak fleet commanders. Her voice echoed through their ships, speaking in their own language thanks to translation programs captured from the space station. Attention Vorthak forces, your command structure has been compromised, and your fleet coordination has failed, she announced with confidence that surprised even herself. Surrender immediately or face complete destruction. Your tactical advantage is gone and you cannot win this battle. The psychological impact of having their secure communication networks completely compromised was devastating to alien morale. The Vorthak had always depended on their technological superiority to intimidate enemies. Hearing human voices speaking through their own systems showed that their advantage was gone. Several smaller alien vessels began powering down their weapons and broadcasting surrender signals. Their captains realized that continuing to fight without proper coordination would only result in more casualties. The human disruption had turned their greatest strength into a fatal weakness. High Commander Thexver was trapped in the negotiation chamber as explosions rocked the space station around him. His massive frame was powerful enough to tear through metal walls, but he found himself facing opponents who refused to be intimidated by size and strength alone. Ambassador Kim Nari had rallied the other human prisoners, and they were fighting back with improvised weapons and desperate courage. She used her diplomatic training to coordinate their resistance, while Dr. Choi provided technical support with his modified scanning equipment that disrupted alien nervous systems. "Your empire is built on fear and intimidation," she told the alien commander while dodging his massive claws. "But humans do not stay afraid forever. We adapt and we learn and we fight back. That is why you will never defeat us completely." The alien leader was beginning to understand that he had seriously underestimated human capabilities. His species had conquered 12 other civilizations using the same tactics of technological superiority and psychological warfare. But humans were different from any enemy they had faced before. Captain Lee Hyan brought the Defiance alongside the Vorthic flagship and extended docking tubes for the final assault. His crew had turned a diplomatic vessel into an effective warship using nothing but human ingenuity and determination. They were about to prove that adaptability was more powerful than advanced technology. Sergeant Major Yoon Ji-woo reached the bridge of the alien command ship and found herself face to face with the fleet's senior officers. The Vorthek commanders were larger and more heavily armed, but they had never trained for this kind of close-quarters combat aboard their own vessels. "Surrender now and your crews will be treated according to the laws of war," she announced while her Marines covered every exit from the bridge. "Continue fighting and we will take this ship by force. The choice is yours, but choose quickly." The alien officers looked at each other with uncertainty. Their rigid command structure had not prepared them for making independent decisions without orders from higher authority. They had been trained to follow orders, not to think for themselves in crisis situations. Dr. Choi's electromagnetic weapon continued, disrupting Vorthak systems throughout the alien fleet. Ships that had seemed invincible just an hour before were now drifting helplessly or firing at random targets. The careful coordination that had made them dangerous was completely gone. Lieutenant Commander Besahi monitored communication channels throughout the battle area and reported that more alien vessels were surrendering every minute. The psychological impact of losing their technological advantage was spreading panic through the Vorthik ranks faster than any physical weapon could have done. Ambassador Kim Nari finally cornered High Commander Thexfer in a damaged section of the negotiation chamber. The massive alien was wounded and exhausted from fighting against opponents who refused to give up despite being smaller and apparently weaker. "Your trap has failed," she told him firmly. "Your fleet is in chaos and your soldiers are surrendering. The war you thought you could win with deception and treachery is turning against you. Perhaps now you will understand why humans value honor and fair dealing above temporary advantages." The alien commander looked around at the destruction caused by human resistance and realized that his entire plan had backfired completely. Instead of eliminating human leadership, he had demonstrated their strength and determination to the entire galaxy. Word of this battle would spread and other species would know that humans could not be easily defeated. The tables had turned completely from alien ambush to human victory. But the final outcome would depend on whether the humans could maintain their advantage and secure the surrender of the remaining enemy forces before their improvised weapons and tactics reached their limits. High Commander Thexfer knelt in the ruins of the negotiation chamber with his massive hands bound by human restraints. The alien leader, who had seemed so threatening just hours before, now looked defeated and confused. His yellow eyes no longer glowed with predatory confidence but showed the dull acceptance of complete failure. Ambassador Kim Nari stood over him with her diplomatic uniform torn but her dignity intact. She held a datapad containing the new terms of surrender that the Vorthik Empire would be forced to accept. These were not the generous peace proposals from yesterday, but the harsh conditions that victors imposed on the defeated. "High Commander, your fleet has surrendered and your trap has failed completely," she announced in a voice that carried throughout the damaged station. "You will now listen to humanity's terms and you will accept them without negotiation. The time for alien deception is over." The Vorthik flagship had been completely captured by Sergeant Major Yoon Ji-woo and her Marines. The alien bridge crew sat under guard while human technicians worked to understand their advanced systems. Every piece of technology would be studied and copied to improve Earth's defenses against future threats, Captain Lee Hyun received reports from throughout the battle area as the last enemy vessels powered down their weapons and broadcast surrender signals. The electromagnetic disruption had been so effective that most Vorthak ships were unable to fight even if they wanted to continue the battle. "Lieutenant Commander Bay, what is our casualty report?" he asked while watching the alien fleet through the main view screen. "Surprisingly light, Captain," she replied with obvious relief in her voice. "We have 12 wounded Marines and some damage to our communication systems, but no fatalities. The enemy lost over 30 ships and thousands of personnel. Their rigid tactics made them vulnerable once we disrupted their coordination." Dr. Troy Deho emerged from his hiding place aboard the space station, carrying the scanning equipment that had proved so crucial to their victory. His discovery about Vorthak communication weaknesses would revolutionize human military technology and give Earth a decisive advantage in any future conflicts. "Captain, I have gathered extensive data about alien fleet coordination and individual ship capabilities," he reported. "This information will allow us to develop countermeasures against their entire technological base. They will never again have the element of surprise." The arrival of Admiral Park Min-ho with a human relief fleet completed the transformation from disaster to triumph. The old military leader had received Lieutenant Commander Bae Sahi's emergency transmission and mobilized every available warship for a rescue mission. Instead of finding wreckage, he discovered a complete human victory. "Captain Lee, your crew has achieved something remarkable here," the admiral said as his flagship took position near the captured space station. "Intelligence reports indicate that this was the main Vorthak battle fleet. Destroying it has eliminated their ability to threaten Earth directly." The scope of the human victory was becoming clear as damage assessments came in from throughout the alien formation. The Vorthak had committed their best ships and most experienced crews to this operation. Losing them would cripple their military capabilities for years to come. Sergeant Major Yoon Ji-woo supervised the transfer of alien prisoners to secure holding areas aboard the human fleet. The captured Vorthak officers provided valuable intelligence about their empire's military structure and strategic plans. Many of their conquered territories were already in rebellion after news of the defeat spread. Ambassador Kim Nari began dictating the terms of the new peace treaty to High Commander Vexler and his surviving officers. These conditions were far different from the generous proposals that humanity had originally offered. The aliens had chosen treachery over honor, and now they would pay the price. "The Vorthak Empire will immediately withdraw from all contested star systems and establish no military presence within 50 light-years of human space," she announced while recording the terms for transmission to Earth. "You will pay reparations for every human colony destroyed and every civilian killed during this war." The defeated alien commander had no choice but to accept every demand. His empire's reputation for invincibility was shattered and other subject species were already declaring independence. The psychological impact of losing to supposedly inferior humans was spreading panic throughout Vorthak territory. Dr. Choi's electromagnetic weapon had revealed a fundamental weakness in alien military thinking. Their dependence on technological superiority and rigid command structures made them vulnerable to adaptive human tactics. The innovation and individual initiative that characterized human forces was something their society could not replicate. Lieutenant Commander Bae Sahi established communication links with Earth to transmit news of the victory along with detailed technical data about captured alien systems. The information would allow human scientists to develop new weapons and defenses based on superior understanding of enemy capabilities. Captain Lee Hyun addressed his crew from the bridge of the Defiance as repair teams worked to fix the damage from their desperate battle. Every member of the ship's company had contributed to the victory through their specialized skills and unwavering determination to defend humanity. "Today we proved that human courage and ingenuity can overcome any threat," he announced over the ship's communication system. "We turned an alien trap into our greatest victory. Word of this battle will spread throughout the galaxy and other species will know that humanity cannot be easily defeated." The space station that had been designed as a trap for human leadership became the symbol of alien defeat. The Vorthak had built it to demonstrate their technological superiority, but it ended up showcasing human adaptability and determination instead. Ambassador Kim Nari completed the surrender documents and prepared them for transmission to both Earth and the Vorthak homeworld. The peace treaty that emerged from this conflict would be based on human strength rather than alien mercy. True peace required the power to defend it, and humanity had proved they possessed that power. The Defiance and its escort vessels began the journey back to Earth, carrying news of victory and captured alien technology. The diplomatic mission that had started as a potential disaster had become the foundation for human emergence as a major galactic power. Other alien civilizations throughout the galaxy received reports of the Vorthak defeat and began approaching Earth with genuine diplomatic overtures. The species that had seemed weak and vulnerable just days before was now recognized as a force to be respected and courted rather than conquered. The failed trap had taught the galaxy an important lesson about humanity. Humans could be peaceful and diplomatic when treated with honor, but they were also capable of devastating military action when betrayed. The choice of war or peace would always belong to their enemies, but the consequences of choosing wrongly had been demonstrated beyond any doubt. High Commander Thexfer and his surviving officers were transported to Earth for trial and imprisonment. Their empire would spend decades recovering from this defeat, while humanity used the captured technology to strengthen their defenses and expand their influence among the stars. The peace treaty was signed not in a spirit of reconciliation, but as an acknowledgement of human victory and alien defeat. Ambassador Kim Nari had achieved her goal of ending the war, but through strength rather than compromise. Sometimes the only path to lasting peace led through decisive military action.